when he calls me, I will answer. When he calls me, I will have to answer. When he calls me, I will answer. I will be somewhere. I will be somewhere listening for my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Somebody's calling me. Hush, please hush. Just hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. What do you want me to do? Will you hush? Please hush. Somebody calling my name. Hush. Hush, hush, hush. I hear somebody calling my name. Yes, I hear. Hush. Why don't you just hush? Somebody is calling my name.
Oh, yes. Today we're calling that name, the name of Martin Luther King Jr. Today is his day, and we will be calling his name and intoning, hopefully, the ways he wanted us to go, how we were to get there, the vision that he had and shared with us, and of course, the sacrifice that he made in our name. This is Leid Stories. I'm Utrice Leid, and that wonderful song is one of my very favorites. It's by the late Della Reese, and I should mention the late Reverend Della Reese with Hush, Somebody's Calling My Name. It's from her Grammy-nominated 1998 album, My Soul Feels Better Right Now. We're going to be remembering and talking about Martin Luther King today from a personal perspective, your personal perspective, on not what he had accomplished, not only what he had accomplished. More importantly, I want us to address the perhaps uncomfortable question of what we still owe this man, this great man. What is the debt owed to him? that we have to pay? It's a very uncomfortable question, I know, because we're not accustomed to being called to account. And certainly, as we measure, not that we should, but as we measure ourselves against the accomplishments of this man and the movement that he spawned and the people who aggregated around this movement and pushed us as a group, as a collective, all forward. I dare say that in recent decades, we have not been behaving like we owe a debt. And really, it's not to him in the strictest sense. The debt is to ourselves, of course. He started a movement. He was not the only one. He was the first to tell people that. But he became the lightning rod for all of the grievances, the wrongs of this country, and the resistance to a people's movement to set things right, and the price people had to pay. We seldom deal with that. But we're not talking about what the country has done. We know that. We're talking today instead about what we feel we ourselves, what we owe, what is our debt that we have yet to pay. That's where we're going. That's where we're going today. We are not talking about the occupant of the White House. We do not want to besmirch this day with his name. We're talking among ourselves, and we're talking with ourselves about a feeling that I'm sure you felt it growing within you, that we're falling and have fallen far short of expectations. Let's kind of fortify ourselves, if we can, by talking to each other and put ourselves back on track. And today is a good day to do that, to have that kind of mindset. So, I want to start that off by this little talk that Martin Luther King gave, in which he directly addresses the question of how he had to muster up his own courage, how he had to deal with challenges, how he felt that he had fallen down, and what he had to do to fortify himself, to continue. This is really an extraordinary speech, a little part of a talk that he gave. But what is instructive here is that he is talking at a point in his life when the whole world recognized him as a big deal. And what he's saying is, let me take you back to how I had to struggle through. And in that sense, I am not a big deal. I'm no bigger a deal than you are. I had to struggle through things. I had to face extraordinary threats to my life. But I had a strength that is with me always. It brings me through. This is a very instructive lesson. So let's hear it. It's not too long, but it is very insightful.
Then we started our struggle together. Things were going well for the first few days, but then about 10 or 15 days later, after the white people in Montgomery knew that we meant business, they started doing some nasty things. They started making nasty telephone calls, and came to the point that some days more than 40 telephone calls would come in, threatening my life, the life of my family, the life of my children. I took it for a while in a strong manner, but I never will forget one night very late. It was around midnight, and you can have some strange experiences at midnight. I had been out meeting with the steering committee all that night, and I came home. My wife was in the bed, and I immediately crawled into bed to get some rest, to get up early the next morning to try to keep things going. And immediately the telephone started ringing, and I picked it up. On the other end was an ugly voice. That voice said to me in substance, "Nigger, we are tired of you and your mess now. And if you aren't out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow your brains out and blow up your house." I had heard these things before, but for some reason that night it got to me. I turned over and I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was frustrated, bewildered. And then I got up and went back to the kitchen, and I started warming some coffee, thinking that coffee would give me a little relief. And then I started thinking about many things. I pulled back on the theology and philosophy that I had just studied in the universities, trying to give philosophical and theological reasons for the existence and the reality of sin and evil, but the answer didn't quite come there. I sat there and thought about a beautiful little daughter who had just been born about a month earlier. We have 4 children now, but we only had one then. She was the darling of my life. I'd come in night after night and see that little gentle smile. And I sat at that table thinking about that little girl and thinking about the fact that she could be taken away from me any minute. And I started thinking about a dedicated, devoted, and loyal wife who was over there asleep. She could be taken from me, I could be taken from her. And I got to the point that I couldn't take it any longer. I was weak. And something said to me, "You can't call on Daddy now. He's up in Atlanta 175 miles away. You can't even call on Mama now. You got to call on that something and that person that your daddy used to tell you about. That power that can make a way out of no way." I discovered then that religion had to become real to me, and I had to know God for myself. And I bowed down over that cup of coffee. I never will forget it. Oh, yes, I prayed a prayer, and I prayed out loud that night. I said, Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think the cause that we represent is right. But Lord, I must confess that I'm weak now, I'm faltering, I'm losing my courage. It seemed at that moment that I could hear an inner voice saying to me, Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you even until the end of the world. I tell you, I've seen the lightning flash. I've heard the thunder roll. I've felt sin breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul. But I heard the voice of Jesus saying, still to fight on. He promised never to leave me, never to leave me alone. No, never alone. No, never alone. He promised never to leave me, never to leave me alone. Sometimes I feel discouraged. And I don't mind telling you this morning that sometimes I feel discouraged. I felt discouraged in Chicago. As I moved through Mississippi and Georgia and Alabama, I feel discouraged. Living every day under the threat of death, I feel discouraged sometimes. Living every day under extensive criticism, even from Negroes, I feel discouraged sometimes. Yes, sometimes I feel discouraged and feel my works in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. God bless you.
A speech. Here is a man so many people revere, look to him for direction. He embodied a movement for freedom, equality, and justice. And here he is openly confessing that he was not so sure, sometimes from moment to moment, whether he was going to be able to do this work, whether he could pull it off, whether he could stay the course. He talked about threats to his life and to the lives of his family. And in a poignant moment, when he is totally alone, he had just come back from a long day of organizing and meeting. He's tired. And he is having a crisis with himself. One of faith. He's doubting. He's fearful. He's questioning his capacity to do this work. And yet, he arrives at a conclusion that makes no sense to a logical mind. The logical mind would say the cons outweigh the pros. Give it up. Find some other thing to do. You have a church You're well known across the nation. You won't starve. You can live well enough. You have your education. You have your experience. There will be people who would rush to help you climb the ladder of success. You don't have to go through all of this, you and your family. You can, and people would understand. You can, with the same fervor and candor, tell people, I have gone as far as I can go. I have done as much as I can. I have given myself to this movement, but I have reached a point where I must turn away from it now, turn it over to somebody else. And I just don't have it. I don't have the strength. I don't have the creativity. I don't have the steadfastness. I don't have the, I just don't have it. I don't have any more to give. But at that quiet hour of the morning, when he's thinking and ruminating and weighing his options and weighing his, as he sees it, his personal responsibility to millions of people looking strictly to him for answers and direction. He could not afford to lose faith. He held on to the faith, even as he held on to the reality, a very awful reality, that he is putting his life on the line. It was no secret to him that the system and specific people in it wanted him dead. But he's a young man. He's not even 40 yet. He's 39. He could have had a great life, a stress-free life, a cushy life. But some things spoke to him in the wee hours of the morning and convinced him that death wasn't really permanent, and he wasn't going to die in that sense, in that we mean it. That he was serving a purpose. His work was to bring people together, to have them empower themselves, and in so doing, to change their condition. And of course, we know how this movement changed the world. It changed the world. But in the ensuing years, after King was assassinated, we went through a cycle that, I hate to say it, was predictable. There was anger. People were very, very disillusioned. But in the end, the goals that were set, the things that were being fought for, we just petered out. We were looking for somebody to hold us together like he did. We were looking for somebody to inspire us, to give us permission, if you will, to do what we needed to do all along for ourselves. And we didn't find it because we were looking in the wrong place. We were looking outside of ourselves. And as we just heard, the answer is not outside of ourselves. The answer is inside of us. We have to discover ourselves for ourselves. We have to do the work. We have to carry the torch. We have to be involved, not just ceremoniously once a year comes Martin Luther King Day and the president would lay a wreath at his memorial. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about staying the course. I'm talking about being true to our collective interests. I'm talking about involvement at a level we long ago abandoned. We think, well, it's somebody else's job. You take care of yourself. I have no role to play. I have enough trouble trying to keep my thing together. I don't have the time. I don't have the interest in putting my 2 cents in a pot, my energies toward a shared and common goal. So I'm asking us today, what, therefore, is the debt we owe? If you think there is a debt we owe, some people don't think so. But what is the debt owed, not just to King, but to the whole history of struggle and the individuals who laid their lives on the line, and there's so many, so that we might advance, even if incrementally. Do you think we owe them a debt? Is there something that we are called upon to do as a link in this chain toward progress? Or do we just think that, hey, it was nice of him to do what he did. It's so sad he died, but, life goes on. That was his destiny, and he fulfilled his destiny. But do we care about whether we are part of that destiny too? I'm just asking the question. 888-874-4888 is the number to call. I just want to know what you're thinking about that question. I don't want to talk about, the good things that he did. We already understand that. We're talking now about obligation. We're talking about personal accountability. We're talking about duty. Do we have a duty? A duty to fulfill these ideas, these visions? Do we have a duty to stay the course? Do we have an obligation even to the memory, not just of King, but of all those who went ahead of us and who are still struggling today? Do we feel good about our performance in this regard? Have we stepped up to the plate the way King did? Have we taken risks, or have we played it safe? Are we leaving it up to others to do the work of getting us through? These are pretty heavy questions, and they probably will not be asked of anybody on this day. Today is the day for people to pretend that everybody loved Martin Luther King. It was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, he did what he did, and good for him, as if this all was about him. It's not about him. It's about us. And we have fallen down on the job, the task, so often. Are we going to stop that bad habit? Are we going to get involved in saving our communities, our people, ourselves? And instead of being, bystanders, observers, and theoretical commentators, are we going to roll up our sleeves and do something about our shared condition? 888-874-4888. I want to hear it from you today, and I want to encourage us to talk this through, to talk this out, because it's one of those things that we're reluctant to face. We're reluctant to call ourselves into account. We are clear about all the things that people did to us, and specifically to our leaders, the awful things that were done to them. Are we prepared to admit that we also did awful things to them by not stepping up, by not supporting them financially, by leaving them open to attack, by not supporting movements that are about lifting people up? Really, what are we doing here? What are we doing? And what is the debt that we owe? Do you even agree that we have a debt to pay? And what do you think it might be? For you yourself, how do you embrace that idea that you have a role to play, a continuing role to play in this whole journey toward justice and freedom and equality? Do you see yourself as having any role to play at all? Many people do not. They think it's somebody else's job. And then we read, the natural consequences. I say natural because that's what happens when people step out to accomplish something so great, so big. They instantly become threats to the system. They're instantly marked for death and other misfortunes. And how many times are we going to allow this to happen? We don't surround them. We don't support them. We don't give them their props while they are alive. And we wait for the inevitable assassin's bullet. And then we become very, very concerned about what has happened to our dearly departed leader. We have some dues to pay ourselves, and we should get busy thinking about that. We should be alert and clear that we have still a long way to go, and it is our job to run our leg of the race. From Mount Vernon, Lincoln, you're on the air.
Hi, good day.
Hello.
Yes, and maybe it's appropriate to say Happy Martin Luther King's Day. Hello?
Yes, it is appropriate.
Yeah, I give humor me for a second, and I'm going to answer your point. You know, since I was a child, I remember when I was 12 years old, when I first was exposed to Caribbean history, and I started learning about what happened to black people in slavery. I became a different child instantly. And I was fortunate to have had a friend, his name was Herbert Smith. And this was a young boy who also was very much politically educated. He actually was the boy who told me about Gaddafi, because he was very enamored of Gaddafi in his teens. And he put me on a political trajectory. However, as a child, when I first saw, then when I read Black Like Me about what was happening to black people in America, and I read Malcolm X's book, and then I was looking at the poverty in Jamaica, and I decided that I was going to enter into politics and right the wrongs. I decided I was going to set up a system similar to Gaddafi, where free education, free health care, housing for everyone. And when I say housing, not something that the storms could come and bash down, but everyone would have buildings, made out of concrete like the ones that I grew up in, and so, I said, okay, I set out, I came here and I was studying. I originally went to school for medicine, but I dropped out because I had an interest in theater since childhood. So I decided I would venture upon a theater career, but it was not for this. Even though I had artistic proclivities, my intention was to garner fame from it, and then to parlay the fame into a political career in Jamaica, because I didn't want to climb up the ranks. And then
you're telling us all about you. Could you relate to at least obliquely, even if obliquely, to the subject at hand?
That's what I'm going to tell you, So then I got into running, and I decided that I would become the first person to run the marathon under two hours. And my only reason for wanting to do this was because I wanted to garner fame from this also, but was to get the money and the fame to parlay it into a political career, because I'd want to go back to Jamaica and start a political party, which I still call it, because the dream hasn't died, the People's Referendum Party, because I was planning to go back to set up a referendum system. So I used to run sometimes 300.
But Lincoln, get to the point, please. You're not the only one wanting to talk. Let's use the time efficiently.
So this is what I'm saying. Because of this dream and my passion for the people, I used to actually run sometimes 350 miles a week to get to this dream. It so happened that I got injured badly, and for a whole year I couldn't run. But this passion never died. And so and when the injury was over, I came back and I got to the point where I was back up to 300 miles again a week. And then I got injured again, and I came back again after another year, and this kept going and going and going. So I'm just saying that to say there are many of us who are using different routes which many people may not know, and we are going through all kinds of pains, etc. Even when I post things on Facebook, etc., risky things, I know that it might cause me not to be able to work, And, a lot of things, there could be a lot of repercussions. And even in the face of all these possible negative outcomes, I still keep, doing research, even though I might be broke, and I'm spending time trying to share information, trying to,
Okay,
impart
let
things to others.
me bring. I have to rein you in because you're way off target, and we have people who want to contribute to the program. Do you believe that we have unpaid debts to those people who went before us? And Martin Luther King being a current example that we're talking about today. Do you believe that we have debts to pay, and what would be the nature of those debts as you see it?
I was just trying to explain to you how, based upon Malcolm X, etc., based upon seeing what was happening to my people, the choice I was going to make. And when I was making this choice, I wasn't making it saying I'm going to pay a debt to Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. I was looking at the conditions of the people. Like right now, when I think of politics, I don't think of it in terms of unpaid debts. I think of it of what is happening to my people right now and what I would like to do about them. Yes, I appreciate the work of those others, but I don't think of it in terms of paying no debt. I think of it in terms of rectifying a particular situation, as the situation we're in right now. That's how I see politics. I don't see, and that's how I. Hello?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and I just see those people as stimulation for us to go on, but not for me to be sitting around saying I'm going to pay debt to them. No, it's a stimulation for us to keep us firing.
You totally misconstrued the whole point of the question. It is not about anybody waking up in the morning and deciding, well, I'm going to today pay my debt to Malcolm X, or I'm going to pay my debt to any particular person who has played a major role, Fannie Lou Hamer. That is not the question. The question is, do we recognize that we have outstanding debts, that we have abrogated our responsibility, if one could use the word, to continue their work? Are we investing in that work? Are we doing what we should do to honor the work that they have done by building on their work today? That's it. It's
Some
not
of
about,
us are. Many of us are doing so.
Well, good. I'm glad, but I'm saying,
and we're doing it in our own way.
Yes, I understand everybody would do things their own way. I'm just asking, what is the consciousness of the average person about this issue of having or believing themselves to have an obligation to continue the work? And in what ways are they doing so? That's a conversation. I'm not indicting
like when we call in on this program and we share our opinions, and especially if we share it with the intention of waking each other up, I think that's what we're doing.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for your input today.
Right.
888-874-4888. Our constant question, and it is a legitimate question, and it is meant to wake us up. Are we fully engaged, or engaged as much as we possibly can in the same work that so many people who went before us, unsung heroes, people we don't even know, but people who created change by getting themselves involved in movements and in works that promoted such change? Are we doing that? Are we emulating their spirit? Are we doing the kind of work that could lead to a resurgence in our communities? Because as we see, at least this is my feeling, you can disagree, but I see that we are so far from what we ought to be as a community. We're not following through. We're not picking up the work. We're not doing the work. We're posturing, we're talking, but we're not doing. And that is what yields results. You get a result by doing something, not just talking about it. You get to a fire, you could talk about the fire all you want, but only some effort at putting out a fire actually puts out a fire. That's what I mean. Have we abrogated a responsibility to honor their work and to invest as they did so selflessly in doing the kind of work that wasn't about them? It was about all of us. It wasn't about what they personally could get. Of course, we've had leaders like that who try to present themselves as working in the interests of all of us, but we know that, it's about them. But we can spot those people. I'm saying on a day like this, when we hear King describe himself, and this was just a tiny little window into his life, very scary things that he pondered. A young man at his age of 39 should never have had to deal with that, but he did it. And he did it not for himself, but for all of us. Are we falling down on the job? CC from New York, what is your answer?
Thank you, Utrice, as always, for bringing such a wonderful stimulus to us this day, this special day. And I want to thank the Leid Story leaders, Leaders, and you are greatly appreciated and loved for your presence, for being there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to say, I've mentioned on the show a few times on the program that I was privileged to go to the march on Washington. I was basically clueless for the most part. I was involved with the Youth Council, the NAACP Youth Council, and the Freedom Trains and the whole movement, and it was just to answer the question, I don't. The word consciousness is a fabulous word, and I don't see us, for the most part, being conscious enough to know what questions or to seek out the people or the organizations in the right speed for now, for the times that we're in, and from the times of the march. And I am involved in it now, but it was actually, it came out of something else. I think Lincoln was, trying to get that across with his thing, his presentation. And so, no, we're not doing. I'm working on it. It's not fast enough. It's not broad enough. And I come back to some of the callers, one in particularly, I'm not sure, it might have been Jeff, that mentioned the churches. I take a page, as usual, out of the Jewish playbook and what they're doing all over the world that makes them one of the most powerful so-called minorities. And that is, we've got to organize our religious organizations. But in the meantime, what can I do? And I keep doing what I do in a very unique way. And it has benefits. Matter of fact, I was talking to a young lady yesterday who was 16, and so she was listening to me. She says, "Are you woke?" And I said, "Very." And you're about to be woke right now. So we've got to keep waking. And your show, your program, and I'm making a request. We have Free Your Mind Friday, I think maybe once or twice a month, maybe on the 1st and the 15th or close to the 1st and the 15th, if we can have a strategizing of the debt, of the raising of consciousness, where we can reinforce it and be reminded and also contribute as to what we need to do. We've got to really get this thing to where it should be for 2019, and a lot of things are happening. The 100 women, the things are happening, but there's so much more. Once we can just get clear and specific, like target-seeking missiles.
Well, I like that idea, and let's figure a way to get it done. I'll try and pick up on that idea, because we are not. It's so clear to me, and I'm not just saying it's because it's clear to me, it should be clear to everybody. No. But there's enough evidence that we are disaffected. We don't even have the same spirit anymore. And the things that impel us into action are the same things. It's actually that we are reacting, not acting. We are reacting. We don't come to the table with plans. We don't present demands that are thought out to our leadership. We don't demand that they think in a different way. Like right now, we have people every day, somebody new announces that they're going to be running in 2020. Not one of these people so far. Not that they have to do it right early, but they have had no real connection like King had. Not that they have to, but you're looking for people with organic links to our community, and they don't. Most of them do not. So we are going to repeat the cycle again of people demanding from our community support that they don't qualify for.
Well, I would definitely agree with that. And I might say this: I think we have to learn how to respond appropriately and properly and in real time. We have to learn how to act properly and appropriately in real time, and we have to also increase our self-esteem, our self-image, our self-worth, our self-image, our self-projection, self-dimension, self-management, self-control. We've got to really work on. Dr. Dennis Waitley wrote a book called The 10 Steps of a Winner, Psychology of Winning. It's a classic. You can get it for like $3 or $4 or $5 pre-owned. And it gets us ready. The things that we had in the 60s, they've been kind of beat out through the economy and the shift and the takeover and a lot of things we didn't even know what was happening, and being overextended and trying to be like someone else and be like them. And so we got to come back. And your program is a great resource, and of course we have to expand it. But you're correct, and of course keeping the faith and the hope and the optimistic view is extremely important to know that we have it, and we are powerful people. They said they were the chosen. We're all chosen. We're all powerful, and we're all capable of getting it done. We have to be reminded, though. We have to be reminded.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your call. And
thank you.
That brings us to the end of our program today. I want us to continue thinking about this question because it is central to what becomes of us. And by us, I mean all of us. What becomes of all of us when we opt out and we wait to not act, but to react. That's where we are right now. Thanks so much for listening. We join each other again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
when he called